eye that didn't reflect affection, only ownership. He was old, yes, 70 in fact. But behind that slow-moving body was a man used to getting exactly what he wanted. And on that cold March day what he wanted was Hannah Reeves. She was only 18, barely out of high school. Young, glowing, full of restless dreams, and aching for something bigger than her quiet southern life could offer. Hannah wasn't naive, but she was hungry, for freedom, for escape, for some kind of fairy tale where she'd be the star. Douglas Cain offered her all that, or at least that's what he promised. He had money. Millions, they said. He'd made his fortune flipping commercial real estate in the late 90s, then vanished into a life of quiet luxury. No children. 2 dead wives. No close friends. He lived alone in a gated mansion with antique statues and oil paintings older than his new bride. But Hannah didn't see a red flag, she saw an open door. She met him online. Not on a dating app, on an exclusive, invite-only, companionship website for wealthy older men seeking young partners. Some call it sugaring. Some call it grooming. Either way, Douglas Cain made his intentions clear in his very first message. Loyalty is rewarded. Disobedience is not tolerated. Most would have blocked him. Hannah replied. Within weeks he was buying her things. A new phone. Designer clothes. Tickets to places she'd only seen in magazines. And when he offered her a chance to move in, to become his wife and never want for anything again, she said yes. Maybe she believed it would be temporary. Maybe she thought she'd outsmart him. But she underestimated the one thing that couldn't be bought: control. On March 2, 2023, in a quiet garden behind a secluded Alabama lodge, Hannah walked down a stone path in a modest white dress. No bridesmaids. No bouquet toss. Just her, Douglas, a notary public, and a photographer he hired through Craigslist. The ceremony lasted under 5 minutes. He kissed her cheek, not her lips. When the camera shutter clicked, her smile twitched, but didn't reach her eyes. After the vows, they disappeared into a honeymoon suite tucked deep within the wooded property. The staff said they never saw her again. By the following morning, Hannah Reeves was dead. She was found sprawled on the floor near the bed, hair tangled, bruises blossoming along her collarbone and arms. Her neck bore the telltale signs of strangulation, deep, curved impressions as if someone's fingers had sunk in and refused to let go. Her fingernails were broken as though she'd fought. There was blood under them. Her lips were blue. Her wedding ring was gone. Douglas Cain was the one who called 911. But when first responders arrived, they noted something odd. He was clean. His shirt was fresh. He smelled of aftershave. Not sweat. Not panic. Just silence. He told police she had collapsed, maybe from stress or a reaction to the champagne. But the toxicology came back clean. No drugs. No alcohol. Just fear. The room told a different story. The bed was perfectly made, but the trash can held torn lace. A wine glass was shattered beneath the dresser. There was a deep scratch on the doorframe, almost as if someone had tried to run. Police began their investigation immediately. And what they uncovered would turn the tragic death of a young bride into something far darker, an unfolding nightmare of obsession, manipulation, and a man who'd been preparing for this moment all along. They found a recently signed life insurance policy, $250,000, naming Douglas as the sole beneficiary. They found emails to a lawyer discussing a prenuptial agreement that stripped Hannah of any financial rights unless she died during the marriage. And they found her phone, with one last unsent text saved in her notes app. If something happens, don't believe it was an accident. Who was Douglas Cain really? His past suddenly mattered more than ever. Neighbors back in his gated community whispered about his reclusive lifestyle. Some said they never saw anyone visit. Others mentioned strange noises, yelling, glass breaking late at night. His first wife, Martha, died in a fall down the stairs. Ruled accidental. His second wife, Claire, overdosed on sleeping pills. Again, no foul play confirmed. But 3 wives, 3 tragedies? That pattern can't be coincidence. Yet there was no clear motive. Hannah hadn't been wealthy. She had no enemies. She wasn't trying to leave, at least not publicly. But what if she had threatened to go? What if hours after signing her name to a man's future, she realized she'd signed away her own? Friends later testified that Hannah had sent them strange messages leading up to the wedding. One read, "He watches me sleep. Keeps saying I belong to him." Another, just the night before the ceremony, "I don't think I can do this." But she went through with it anyway. What? Maybe fear. Maybe pressure. Or maybe she thought it was her only ticket out of a life she desperately wanted to escape. What she didn't know was that her new husband may have seen her less as a wife, and more as a possession. The coroner confirmed the cause of death was manual strangulation. The time of death? Roughly 3:30 a.m., just 13 hours after she'd whispered, "I do." 13 hours. That's all it took for a marriage to turn into a murder scene. It begs the question, what happened in those missing hours? Between the last dance and the final gasp? Did Hannah try to run? Did she fight back? Or did she never get the chance? And what about Douglas? He never shed a tear. He never asked to see her body. In the hours after her death, before the arrest, he was already on the phone with his lawyer. Not asking what went wrong, but what he stood to gain. He said it was an accident. That she must have hurt herself. But bruises don't lie. Torn fingernails don't lie. Silence when someone should be screaming doesn't lie. The truth is, this story isn't just about an age gap. It isn't about sugar daddies or reckless girls chasing luxury. It's about power, and what happens when the person with all of it decides that you are no longer useful, no longer loyal, no longer theirs. This is about Hannah. A girl who thought she was stepping into a fairy tale, and walked straight into a nightmare. Her family never got to see her in her wedding dress. Her father wasn't invited. Her mother didn't know where she was until the police called. And by then it was already too late. What happened between "I do" and 911? That's the question that will haunt everyone who knew her. And the rest of us. We're left with a story that lingers in the dark. A warning. A whisper. Not all fairy tales end with a kiss. Some end with a scream. And sometimes the prince is the monster in disguise. She was 17 when they met. Still legally a child. Living in her aunt's spare bedroom, estranged from her parents, chasing freedom like it was oxygen. Hannah Reeves didn't just want to escape, she needed to. So when she found Elegant Matches, an elite online sugar baby forum catering to wealthy older men, she thought she'd stumbled into her golden ticket. That's where she met him. Douglas Cain. 70 years old. Twice widowed. A multimillionaire who hadn't made headlines in decades but still lived like royalty in the shadows. His profile didn't bother with subtlety. It read like a manifesto, looking for a lasting legacy. Someone who understands loyalty, discretion, and devotion. Those weren't just words. They were rules. Douglas didn't want love. He wanted obedience. And he had the means to buy it. Friends say Hannah wasn't naive, she was calculating. She saw it as a move, her best friend Sarah later told investigators. She thought she could control the situation. Control him. But she was wrong. He was the one pulling every string. From the very beginning, Douglas laid the foundation for domination. He wooed her not with flowers or love notes, but control. He bought her a new phone, then secretly installed GPS tracking on it. He invited her into his estate, then installed surveillance cameras inside the bedroom. He didn't just isolate her emotionally, he did it physically. By the time she turned 18, he was already planning their wedding and their honeymoon. A private retreat, deep in the Alabama woods. No cell service. No neighbors. No escape. March 2, 2023. The wedding was quiet. Private. No music. No guests. Just Douglas, Hannah, a notary, one Craigslist photographer, and his estate lawyer. They're not to celebrate but to witness. They said "I do" in a small garden behind a remote lodge, surrounded by stillness. No dancing. No joy. Just a signature and a chilling smile. By midnight, just 13 hours later, the dream was dead. Authorities were called to the honeymoon cabin after Douglas placed a strange, emotionless 911 call. She collapsed, he claimed. Maybe the champagne. I tried CPR. But when first responders arrived, the scene didn't look like a fainting spell. It looked like murder. Hannah's body was cold, sprawled on the floor near the bed. Her neck bore deep ligature marks. Her arms showed bruises and scrapes, classic defensive wounds. Her fingernails were chipped and bloodied. Under one of them, Douglas's DNA. There were no signs of alcohol. No signs of sedatives. Just signs of struggle. And fear. The autopsy was clear. Cause of death, manual strangulation. This wasn't sudden. It was prolonged. Deliberate. Personal. But Douglas had already cleaned himself up. Showered. Changed clothes. When police arrived, he looked almost fresh. And calm. Too calm. Detectives began piecing together the timeline, and every crack in the surface revealed something darker underneath. Why was the cabin nearly spotless, except for a single fingerprint on the doorknob? Why had the wedding photographer reported that Hannah was visibly crying during their photo session? Why did she whisper, "He's not what I thought," moments after signing her life away, and then came the paperwork. Just hours before the ceremony, Hannah had signed a prenuptial agreement, witnessed only by Douglas's attorney. It stated she'd receive nothing in the event of divorce. But if she died during the marriage, Douglas would collect a $250,000 life insurance policy. A policy finalized the morning of her death. The case unraveled fast. Douglas's defense team painted him as a misunderstood old man, fragile, heartbroken. A man of faith, not violence, his attorney claimed. They even floated the idea that Hannah's death could have been the result of a consensual, intimate encounter gone too far. But prosecutors had evidence that shattered any illusion of romance. Text messages from Hannah to her friend, days before the wedding. "He watches me sleep. I feel like I'm in a cage." And worse, a voice recording buried in her phone, captured just 2 nights before she died. "Hannah, you're scaring me. Douglas, you're mine now. No leaving." Control. Ownership. Obsession. When police dug deeper, the pattern became chillingly clear. Douglas's first wife, Martha, had died in a fall, downstairs in their old Victorian home. No autopsy was performed. His second wife, Claire, died from an apparent overdose. Ruled accidental. No one asked questions. Now, his third wife had been dead for less than a day, and Douglas was already contacting his lawyer to inquire about inheritance. Not grief. Not funeral plans. Just inheritance. As trial approached, a twist nearly derailed the entire case. Douglas Cain, aged 70, supposedly frail, attempted to flee the country. Authorities intercepted him at a private airfield near Miami. One-way ticket. Private jet. $150,000 in cash. A pre-packed suitcase. The jury didn't hesitate. Verdict, guilty. Sentence, life without parole. But to this day, Douglas maintains his innocence. His voice, raspy but cold, echoed through the courtroom in his final statement. "I didn't kill her. Someone else was there that night." A final twist of the knife. That claim, that he wasn't alone, has fueled online theories ever since. Some believe Douglas had accomplices. Others think he's trying to sow confusion, protect someone, or rewrite the ending of a story already soaked in tragedy. And maybe he's hiding something else. Because some facts still don't add up. The wedding ring was never found. There were no fingerprints on the ring box. No clear murder weapon. No full surveillance footage from the cabin ever released. And then there's Hannah's final message. Saved in her phone. Undelivered. Unread. "If anything happens, it wasn't an accident." That single sentence, chilling, desperate, and deliberate, now hangs over this case like a specter. A message not just to her friends but to the world. To us. So we're left asking, why would an 18-year-old girl marry a 70-year-old man with a history of loss and silence? Was she just chasing comfort? Or was she groomed, manipulated from the moment she clicked accept? And Douglas Cain, did he love Hannah? Or did he acquire her the way he did his vintage cars, his estates, his art? Some say Hannah planned to leave him that night. Some believe she never even had the chance. But one thing is certain. She didn't die of champagne. She didn't collapse from excitement. She fought. And she knew. Now her story lives on, not just as a tragic cautionary tale, but as a haunting reminder of how quickly trust can turn into terror. Because sometimes the monster doesn't hide in the woods. Sometimes he walks you down the aisle. Beat. Long pause. If this case chilled you as much as it haunts us, tell us what you believe happened that night in the comments. Was Hannah planning her escape? Was someone else in that cabin? Or did Douglas Cain orchestrate the perfect crime and just fail to get away in time? Like, share, subscribe. And always remember, not every fairy tale ends in happily ever after. Some end in the dark. Was this a clear-cut case of murder? Or something even darker, manipulation, coercion, and psychological abuse that turned deadly? Drop your thoughts below. Do you think Douglas acted alone? Was Hannah a victim, or did she see it coming? Comment your theories, hit like if this story shocked you, and don't forget to subscribe for more twisted real-life mysteries. Because the truth is never what it seems.